a vast majority of poor, white, working class people playing on their ignorance, playing on their feelings of being alienated and disempowered from centers of political power, and using that and turning that into what we see happening at the southern border with migrant people, with the rhetoric that we hear coming from the Orange Man, with Genocide Joe, endorsing the genocide of the Palestinian people right before our very eyes, using the military-industrial complex to finance and arm the most genocidal European settler state of the modern era. Israel, the Zionist settler state, is the last settler state in the continuum that began in 1776. It's the last settler state. And we need to understand that most of these settler states spun off out of the British Empire from Britain, just like the Balfour Agreement was the basis for Zionism, the Zionist settlers usurping the Palestinian lands, taking their lands and imprisoning them and murdering them and brutalizing them. And the whole of the West, the whole of Europe, the former imperialist nations that colonized Africa, that murdered over 27 million African people in the Middle Passage. These same states are back in Israel. And so we need to understand that what's going on in Palestine is the results of the empire, the geopolitical power of the United States beginning to slip away and wane. And in desperation, we know that the Europeans, especially America, especially the capitalists in America, they always resort to war as the last refuge in order to save themselves.
Make it clear.
So we're on the brink of a third world war.
That's right.
Our children have no future because we have no organization. Our so-called elected officials are all bought and paid for by AIPAC, by corporate dollars, by corporate money. We see this genocide going on in Palestine. We see Muslims being slaughtered around the world. And the Congressional Black Caucus is silent. You don't hear a peep out of it. You see? These Zionist and racist organizations have more political power, more political influence over our so-called elected officials than we do. We see the militarization of the police that has been going on since the late 1960s. It went through the Omnibus Control Act, the war on crime, the war on drugs, and every president and every regime since the 1969 has endorsed and expanded the militarized policing in America. So when we talk about something like Cop City, we have to realize that Cop City was only possible because of the dereliction of activists who did not put in place a city council representatives that represented the black community, that represented the poor community. They instead bought the line that reform and gentrification was the major problem. Reform of policing, gentrification, moving into our community, taking the best areas in our community and upgrading the housing and kicking poor people out of affordable housing. We thought that rhetoric would suffice to put them in a position in the city councils where they wouldn't support something like a Cop City. But we were fooled. We were hoodwinked. And so now we have Cop Cities springing up all over the country. We have the same militarized police that's been working with the Israeli IDF and police forces for the past 2 decades. They train together, they exchange experiences and intelligence information. So what's happening in Palestine is a preview of what's about to be unleashed on African people here in the United States.
Speak on.
That's it.
And we have to be able to protect ourselves, to protect our families, to defend our communities against these rabid clowns in blue costumes. We have to understand that there are things that we should be doing now in order to organize ourselves that we haven't been doing in the past. We haven't been training our children and our younger generation on how to defend the community. We haven't been organizing in the community using the so-called vote to mobilize the community to put referendums on the ballot that could ensure that we can control and curtail the power of the police unions and the power of the police and the mayors in our cities, who are all on the same page with the corporate political power structure. We have been fooled by hashtag movements that have sucked up the oxygen and energies of young people who came out into the streets in the thousands after George Floyd was murdered. They sucked up all that energy with hashtag movements. You know, Black Lives Matter. Like white folks mind and black people matter. It was always mind over matter. They didn't mind and we didn't matter. But these hashtag movements sprang up in the wake of Trayvon Martin, in the wake of George Floyd, and young people took to the streets. And where are they now? Where's that movement now? The leaders have been bought off with millions of dollars and went and bought mansions, and now they're chilling. There's no movement. This was an effort to encapsulate and control the energy that was rising up in the wake of George Floyd. So now we have a lot of young people who were in the streets years ago, 2020, 2019, who are now disgruntled, who are now just saying, man, look, I just gotta get a job and look out for my family and keep it moving. So we have to understand that unless we can bring our people to a reconciliation with our radical history, understanding of our radical history, we will not be able to mobilize our children and our communities in order to defend ourselves. Many of the battles that we're fighting now for voter registration, we're fighting for reform of police, something that's never going to happen in America. All these things that we're fighting for, if you look at the radical history of black people in America, you see that we've already won those battles. We won all that. We won the right to vote. We won the war against the landlords for rent control of housing. We won all of these battles. So why are we fighting them again today? We're reinventing failure. Because the enemy has institutional memory. They remember our victories. They remember how we took to the streets in the 60s and the 70s when we were burning cities down. And they had to come up with a war on poverty in order to buy off the militancy. The war on poverty preceded the hashtag movements. Almost every black so-called elected official got their wings and their footage in the war on poverty. They came out of that war on poverty. They endorsed the war on drugs. They endorsed the militarized policing in the 1960s that led to our communities being devastated by police occupying our communities and brutalizing us. And what did we do? Everybody went to do their own individual thing, get a bag. You know, we have entertainers as spokespersons for our community, for our interests. We have idiots talking about racism doesn't matter. We're in a post-racial dispensation. And all we got to do is control the dollar, keep it in the black community. And that's going to empower us. Capitalism is in a crisis. The US dollar internationally is tied to oil, and it's waning. This is why Gaddafi was murdered. This is why we have war in the Sudan. This is why we have war in Africa. It's for the mineral resources of our continent. And we have a comprador class in Africa that's the equivalent of the comprador bootlickers that we have here in the US. They're selling out their people for IMF loans, for World Bank loans, so that they could drive around in Rolls Royces and drive around in Mercedes Benz while their people scuffle and dig in the dirt just to feed themselves. Go to Africa and look at the masses of people and how they live, and look at the political elite and how they live. And I have to say to you that this is no more about just condemning these people. We have to make life uncomfortable for them. We have to make it so that they can't flee to Europe and to their villas in Europe. They have to stay in their country. So what's going on now with the French being run out of Africa, with the Americans being run out of Africa, with the European Union and NATO being run out of Africa, is a new generation of young people who realize that they have to take control of African history. They have to take control of their own destiny. Otherwise, they have no future. So I just want to try to get you to understand that you shouldn't give up. Many of you have been in the trenches. Most of you that I know personally here have been in the trenches for a long time. And I know how depressing it could look, looking at a new generation that has absolutely nothing on their minds other than individual aggrandizement, getting a bag, and then rising to the top of the entertainment or sports field, and then turn around and open up a sneaker store in the black community and say they're giving back to our community. Giving out turkeys on Kwanzaa. There was a time, that Kwanzaa wasn't even considered serious. And now in December, when you go to the House of Pancakes, or you go to IHOP, they have Kwanzaa memorabilia scattered all over the place. One thing that white supremacy has been able to do, and it's been able to do it for a millennium, is to co-opt the cultures and the behavior of the people that it oppresses and turn it in on themselves and use it against us. There is no such thing as black buying power. We're all consumers. We consume material things that we have absolutely no use for. But we're told that if we don't have it, we don't have any real life, that this material consumption is necessary. We wear designer clothes with some cracker stamped on the back of the pants, and we think that we're doing swell. We got diamonds around our neck and we don't own one diamond mine. Our people, African people, worldwide, are in dire straits. And the war that's coming is going to make it worse. So we have to prepare ourselves, each of you in your own way, reaching out and training each other, trying to bring in new activists, create new revolutionaries, but most of all, we have to use whatever tools that are available to mobilize and organize our people in their own best interests. Now, some of the mobilization and organization that we should have been doing, we didn't do. We haven't availed ourselves of the court system as a means to educate our people. We have never brought a class action suit against the police union in order to educate our people that the police, to the reality that the police are not workers. They're armed agents of the state. They don't deserve a union. They're armed agents of the state. Picture the U.S. military having a union. Picture that. How is it that the mayor gets to appoint the police chief to import some cracker from another jurisdiction and set him up in order to be the police chief in a city that's predominantly black? Where's the public safety districts that vet the police chief based on their accomplishments, based on their skills? Law enforcement has has digitalized our communities to the point where they have weaponized data. They have weaponized our ideas and information and algorithms. We could have a conversation right now, right here, talking about a cell phone. And then when we get on our phones and pop up on Facebook, there's an advertisement for cell phones. And we say, damn, how did they know that? They could turn these things on and off even when we turn them off. They're all up in our personal lives and our personal ambitions. And we think that we have individual leverage. We think that we have personal power. But all we have to do is buy black and we're going to be free. It ain't that simple. Capitalism doesn't work that way. The accumulation of wealth has been done the old-fashioned way. These crackers stole it. That's how they got accumulated wealth, be able to pass it on to their children. They stole it. They stole the profits of laboring poor people and workers, the surplus value of their labor, and they passed it on to their children. When we look at the police state and how it's constructed, we see, now we know about the school to prison pipeline. But 20 years or 15 years ago, you would have had black folks arguing that all you had to do was get an education and stay off the streets and you'll get a job and you'll be good. But what people don't understand is that all of the victories that we won in the civil rights movement and in the black liberation movement of the 50s and 60s, the pushback against that was mass incarceration. Over 2.7 million people in prison, more people in prison than in any other country in the world. And over 60% of those in prison are people of color and black people. Prison has become an industrial warehouse, an industrial means in order to commodify our bodies, just like they did in chattel slavery. Our surplus labor is commodified. There's no jobs for these young people in the streets. There's no future. There's no scholarships for them in college and get a profession and come home and build a family and build a life. That's not what's in the cards. And the few of us who slip through the cracks consider ourselves special, consider ourselves unique. So I said all of this to say that we are living in very difficult times. And the election is coming up in 2024. I doubt seriously that Genocide Joe is still going to be alive by November. He might drop dead. He might have dropped dead already while we talking. and the Orange Man ain't too far behind him. So who we going to mobilize around? Kamala Harris? She can't get elected dog catcher. Her own staff don't want to work for her. If you ever listen to her talk, she says absolutely nothing all the time. So we have a choice between ho and hum. I didn't mean the metaphor like that. With the ho part. I didn't mean it to come out that way. So we have to seriously understand why our communities are racked with homeless people who are suffering mental health problems, and there's no mental health facilities for them, no public health facilities for them. There's no places for them to live. There's no affordable housing. At the same time, the corporations are buying up entire swaths of the urban areas and building high-rises and building houses and for art communities and all of this stuff. We have to understand that, just like the Black Panther Party said back in the days, that the landlord has no property rights to supersede our human rights. Everybody deserves a decent shelter, a decent place to live. Food, clothing, and shelter. That's the 3 prerequisites that we create governments to fulfill. But we see that's not happening here. So, when we talk about the training programs that FTP got going on, trying to train young people into how to protect and defend themselves, when we can get firefighters and people in our community that have professional skills to come out and hold workshops to train our people on how to utilize these skills. Look at the major cities. Every major city is like a human organism. It has a nervous system. It has a heartbeat. It has a transportation system, just like the arteries in our bodies. And if we look at the working people that maintain these cities, and I think the COVID crisis showed us the people who kept everything going when other people were locked in their houses. They look just like you and me. They're the sanitation workers. Who, when you call Verizon to come fix the television and install a television, who comes? A brother with a toolkit on pulls up and sets it up. He knows the system. How come we haven't mobilized these skilled workers to train all of us to create infrastructures in our community so that if the lights go off tomorrow, we'll be able to put them back on in our community? Why is it that churches in our community have hundreds and hundreds of apartment buildings that they own, but there's no community generators? There's no generators that could provide electricity in case of a blackout. We live in vertical ghettos in the projects where our grandmothers and our aunts live on the top floor. What happens when electricity goes out? How do they get downstairs? We have to think about survival in these urban areas like we never thought about it before. Because I will tell you that the lights will go off. And in some places they might not come back on. This is what's happening with the collapse of the infrastructure in America. What's the bills that the Democratic Party are talking about? Infrastructure rehabilitation, building bridges, building power plants, building all of these things that's supposed to provide energy and light and stuff for ordinary working people. But the corporations have a lock on all of this, and they're not going to build anything unless it's profitable to them. So we got to get busy. We're not going to be here forever. Nobody gets out of this life alive. And so while we're here, we have to try to make an impact. We have to try to pass on to a younger generation the skills that we had during the bullwhip days. We survived the most brutal form of chattel slavery as a people. We survived. We survived Jim Crow. We survived segregation. We survived almost 100 years of lynching. In my lifetime, they were lynching black folks. In my lifetime, we survived it. And we didn't survive it with intersectional beefs. We didn't survive it with, well, we're gay and we're straight and women's this, and we survived it together. And that's what we have to do now. We have to transcend our differences of class, caste, and race, and build the type of mechanisms and organizations in our community that will allow us to survive the rise of the white supremacist, evangelical, fascist state. America is a democratic fascist state, and is consolidating its power as we speak. Most of the hard, heavy lifting they've already done. They've already taken over the state legislatures in various states, so that they can ensure that a minority always wins the vote. They already gerrymandered districts where black people who are majority are divided up so that they can't organize and capitalize on their numbers. They've already done this. They've already bought a comprador class. Look at the Negro mayors we got. Look at what happened to Ras Baraka. Look at this guy. Look at the son of Chokwe Lumumba. Go Google them and their recent interviews. Huh? Ras Baraka is running for governor of New Jersey. He can't go nowhere without the endorsement of the police union. So he has a running mate that's a cop. It has a history in law enforcement. This is the same Ras Baraka that used to have media for us and to be in the front of the city hall, and I used to go speak for them. Look at Cory Booker. Where did he come out of? He came out of Newark. Look at these Negroes. Hakeem Jeffrey, the nephew of Leonard Jeffrey. I like to be the fly on the wall during Kwanzaa when they have me, when they're sitting. Look at these Negroes that we have on Capitol Hill who are repping for Israel stronger than they're repping for you. We have to remove them from office one way or the other. They think that they're safe because they get campaign money from AIPAC. They get hundreds of thousands of dollars for their campaign. And they come into the black community and they get pork chop preachers to endorse them and hold church rallies and tell them to get out to vote and vote Democratic Party. This is what we do. Do we disrupt these meetings? Do we throw bricks and eggs at these Negroes so that they can't come into our black community unless they have a phalanx of police around them? Which tells you that they're not of our community. We're giving these people a pass. We need to go back and listen to Malcolm X, The Ballad of the Bullet. We need to go back and listen to our brothers like Kwame Ture, who talked about the Democratic and the Republican parties, and how he was never invested in voting Democratic or voting for anybody. His sole purpose in dealing with the vote was to organize black people in their own interests. So now we are in a situation where the U.S. empire of Germany is being threatened around the world. It's collapsing. It's crumbling. And if we know anything about crackers, when they see their power slipping away, they get desperate. And the first thing that they resort to is violence and war. Because the military-industrial complex is the major source of revenue for the United States government and the national security state. Every treaty that the United States makes and sells an F-15 or a plane or arms to a foreign country, inside that agreement is that that foreign country has to use the origins of that F-15, the factories that created it, in order to get spare parts, in order to maintain it. Mitch McConnell, this cracker, said this couldn't have been a better deal. People think that when we give money, that when the U.S. gives money to Ukraine or Israel, that they're giving the money away. It's not. It's coming back into the economy. It's coming back into the military-industrial complex that created these instruments of death and destruction. So I just want you to understand something here. That you have to organize much more effectively. We have to become much more effective in our outreach efforts, in our mobilization efforts. We are up against power and privilege and money that we don't have. All we have is a sense of self-righteousness. All we have is our sense of right and wrong. Our belief that the people should control their own destiny. That our community should be able to live in harmony and in peace. And we don't have idiots running around fire blasting babies because they can't shoot straight. I mean, you look at Atlanta, man, some of the stuff you see on the YouTube, I mean, you got a whole series on Atlanta on just filling station shootouts. You pulling up to a filling station in Atlanta, man, you take your life in your hands. You see? Now they got all of these guns, they got all of these weapons, and all they kill is each other. They ain't bust a cap in none of these crackers' ass. When the police come, they throw their shit away. Throw it up under the car. Then they sit up in court with a suit and tie on and tattoos all over their face, talking about, you know, it's just poetic license. They're just expressing themselves. You see? It doesn't look good for the home team. It really, really doesn't. If we can use the baseball analogy, it's the ninth inning. There's 2 outs, and the batter up at bat is a 3-2. 3 balls and 2 strikes. And there's nobody on first, nobody on second, and nobody on third. It don't look good for the home team at all. So I just wanted to let you know that we shouldn't just talk and rap. We shouldn't just moan. We need to organize. We really need to organize. Each one of us in our own space, in our own place of business, in our own relationships. We need to pull in people around us that think like us and begin to say, hey, what are we going to do? You know, how do we communicate with each other if they come off the telephone? You know? Who here knows how to use shortwave radio? Who here knows how do we communicate with each other? We live within a quarter of a mile or half a mile of each other. And if the phone goes off, we can't even holler at each other. We got to think about survival on these very basic terms. And so, you know, I appreciate you all coming in the middle of nowhere. I mean, man, listen. I told you I thought Frederick Douglass was going to pop out of there. This was a stop on the Underground Railroad. You know, but leave it to Kalanji. Leave it for Kalanji to create some new dynamic here. You know, you know, I drove up in a car rental, but I see I should have had a 4x4 to come here. You know, off-road. You know, but yeah. I'm just saying, wherever we are at, we have to organize. If we even have to start with just a reading club, we have to create our own networks. Why is it that you sit in the barbershop, or you sit in the beauty salon, or you sit in the doctor's office, and you look up at the monitor, and what's on the monitor? Whoopi Goldberg? We could put those monitors, we could create our own networks with Wi-Fi so that we can put our own CNN in the community. So that we can talk about issues that relate to us. So that we can see ourselves on those monitors and those issues. We have to think like this. We have to think in terms of networks and infrastructure and how we can organize each other. So I just want to say that, you know, I'm glad that I was able to get out here, and we're going to have to, yeah, we could do a few little Q&A, but we're going to have to get going. We are all the way in Snellville, so we far. It's over an hour. How long was it move? An hour? Huh? Yeah, we're an hour.
Moo drive that far just for a party.
Yeah, I know, right?
No, definitely. What we want to do, we're gonna open it up for a few questions because I know that you do have to travel and Dee has to get out of town and everything. First, I'll give OG a round of applause. I want to start with that, and another thing I want to do because of the fact that, you know, he's traveling, and he's traveling, and they drove all the way out here, and it was free to get up in here, you know what I mean? And I want him to give us his cash app, and perhaps we can, if you find it so kind, put something in the bucket. Or if you got some cash or whatever you want to do, then do that. Because of the fact that the thing is, you know, oftentimes I run into folks and they you know, when they find out that there's a ticket on something, they tell you that, oh, I thought you was about the movement, brother. His license movement, his mortgage is movement, the gas to get here is movement, this nice eat that Ogunlewa came in. Give it up to our sister Ogunlewa for it. So making sure our organization was no longer homeless. This is our 20-year anniversary of the FTP movement on June 9th. And we have a whole bunch of things coming up, and we want to definitely see you all in the space. But what is your cash app first before people start sneaking out? You know, you start talking about money. The man Raheem here, he's tiptoeing. He sliding quick, you already know him.
It's the dollar sign, dollar, and my first name is Dhoruba, D-H-O-R-U-B-A. That's my cash app. And PayPal is my first name and Gmail.
What is the icon? Is there a picture of you on the cash app?
I think there's a picture of me. Hopefully it's not.
D-H-O-R-U-B-A.
Hopefully there's no picture.
Picture of something, so people know they got the right name. Whatever image, so people know that they get the right one.
Yeah.
This is like King Dhoruba, so he gonna make up some stuff. I didn't see your picture, so I didn't drop it.
I'm not sending no money to nobody else.
You send it to me, if it's a picture of me, it's good too. Do you have Zelle? You have Zelle? Sir, where's my screen? You have Zelle? You have Zelle?
Who?
Zelle.
Yeah, I got Zelle. The Zelle is the same. It's my email address.
Dhoruba@gmail.com. Okay. So we're gonna start off. I'm gonna start with a question because folks be shy. But I want to start off asking just you know, as an organization, as far as our organization, you know, one of the things that we've been working on has been urban survival preparedness, a lot of the different things that you're talking about right now. What are some of the things that you would suggest as the OG advisor? You know, because what we're doing is we're training not only ourselves, but other cadre from different organizations, and you know pretty much the setup. I want to know what is some of the advice that you can give us for branching out, reaching out, and building coalition with some other folks.
Well, I think the main thing that we should do is that we really need to branch out to faith-based activists in these churches. These churches, a lot of these churches in the community, you know, they have congregations of hundreds of people of middle and older age. You know, they have Bible classes, they have all of these things. We should approach some of these preachers with the idea that their congregation needs to be able to prepare themselves for natural or man-made catastrophes. And that therefore, we like to start a survival training course, whether it's teaching anything from you know, a physical training in terms of how to do artificial respiration and all of this stuff, to coming to them saying, well, look, you know, we like the congregation, you know, to work with us on putting together, seeing that you got this big compound and this big lot, you know, we like to put a generator, you know, a $7,000 generator, big generator in there, so that there always will be light on this block, that we'll be able to have a gathering point in case of a national emergency, that people will be able to come to the church, they know where the church is. So we have to really get with these faith-based organizations and get them off of that dumb shit that they're on, talking about Democratic and Republican Party stuff. A lot of these younger preachers are progressive, but they just progressive, they just regressive in terms of that they think that their congregation and their belief in the Lord and Jesus Christ is sufficient. But they own property. A lot of these churches have apartment buildings, okay? So why don't we get them to say, well, look, y'all have this apartment complex over here. Why don't we put a generator in this apartment complex so the people are guaranteed that in an emergency, there's always going to be electricity, the elevators are going to work, and they'll get with that. You see? Let's do a fundraiser. Get some of these young kids that are entertainers to come out and do a fundraiser. You see? And raise the money. And don't rely on the church just to give you the money. Just let them know, we come into this with a couple of thousand, and we want you to match this, so we can put a series of generators in these projects over here, so that if the lights go off, if there's an emergency, if there's a blackout, you understand, it'll come right on, our people would have electricity, and the church should be a community gathering place, where elderly people can come for shelter, where we can bring the children, and things like this. This is how we really have to reach out to this constituency. And also this opens us up. I mean, and I'm not just talking about the churches, I'm talking about the Muslim communities as well. Okay? Muslims would tend to be more amenable to this type of activity. The preachers, we just have to do a little more convincing. But they can see their own self-interest in having their congregation become a center for community gathering in an emergency. Okay? So we can have a first aid station, that we can have a community health clinic in their basement, and so that means we have to train, get registered nurses that's working in the hospital to maybe give up a few hours every week to train young ladies and to train young brothers in physical therapy, physical education. Okay? So we have to broaden our outreach. We can't look at institutions in our community as isolated. We have to bring them in on whatever level we can get them in, so that we can build a type of network so that when we talk about a referendum or bringing a referendum to the ballot in a particular city for community control of public safety, or to establish public health clinics for the mentally disabled and homeless people, they're on board with us. They can see the value of that, you see. So that would be my suggestion. We have to move away from our own circles and branch out, go to the prayer vigils, go to the church, and sit up there with some of these young brothers and sisters, these single mothers that have to go to the health clinics and stuff, and they don't have insurance, and they don't have all of these things. And organize them.
I want to, first of all, give thanks for you coming, Baba. Thanks for being here, and thanks for raising the question and criticisms. I unite with everything that you're saying, as well as the comment about how to organize. On the way in here, we're talking about what we need to do to recruit, because all the organizers are burnt out or overworked. An event can't be organized because five people are doing the jobs of 500, and so recruitment is important, and like you said, this is a great suggestion. As a question, I'd ask you for you to expound on that even more, but secondly, I want to comment that there is an event this weekend led by the Campaign of Freedom Al Siddiqui, that's an interfaith-based conference, and the same conversation that he just raised, some of us should attend this conference virtually and in person, to raise these same questions, because we're going to have all these faith-based leaders and all of these different conversations, and survival and self-defense is not necessarily mentioned as a particular topic. You know what I mean? It can be interwoven in the conversation, and I think that that's something for us here to bring to that conversation. So I want to make that comment, and also in terms of health, I'm a representative of the Acupuncture Detox Collective and the lineage of Dr. Matul Shakur. We're going to be doing Acupuncture training with FTP. FTP has always been some sort of survival training, and that we plug into FTP even more and help bring FTP into our organization. I know other people in here are in other organizations. I know I'm not the only one. So I have more of a comment than a question, but I want to say that I unite, and that these things, we have everything we need. That everything that Baba Dhoruba talked about, we already have within us, and we just need to access it and pull it out and keep it at the fore, and get more people involved, because it's not happening the way we need it to.
I think
at the speed that we need it to.
To add on to that, when we're talking about reaching out to faith base, you know, the church and the religious community has always been a pillar of institutional protest and struggle for black people. You see? So we should encourage these preachers to read their own history, to read, you know? And that's something they don't do. They might read the Bible and they might talk about JC and all of this stuff, you understand? But they need to read. They need to read the radical tradition of the black church. They need to read liberation theologies from other countries. We need to bring that to them when we go to the Bible study class and say, Mr. Deacon, you know, I have a book here called, you know, Jesus Was a Revolutionary. And I got about 6 copies here, you know, that I bought in. I like, you know, maybe we could have a little reading session here, a little, you know, a study session with this. And this is a way to get people awoken out of their miasma, out of their own circles, so that they can see that they can contribute, that everybody could contribute, everybody could make a difference. You see? So I just want to add to what the brother was saying. We have to expand ourselves, expand our circles, and encourage a younger generation and other people to read. We really have to read our own radical history. We have a rich history of resistance and survival, but we're not drawing on it.
Thank you, Father, for being here and for giving your knowledge. Firstly, my question is, what would you say to a high school student being convinced by recruiters to join the military for stability?
This is what we say about reading. If the young people don't understand, I mean, we know we can go through the history of the draft in America. We can go, if we go back as far as the Vietnam War, we saw how many, over 40% or 35% of the frontline soldiers were black in Vietnam. We've always come to the forefront to defend America and use violence in defense of America, but when it comes to us here, everybody's nonviolent. You see, we have a social draft. You know, what is it? What are you going to tell a 17 or 18-year-old who doesn't have a scholarship to school and doesn't have any type of training? You know, you join the military, you get life insurance, you understand, you get training, you go in for 4 years, you understand, and you can come back and you become an X-ray technician in the hospital, you see? And I mean, when you go to the hospital and you ask some of these young folks, you know, where did you get your training from? Some of them will tell you they got it in the military. You see? So the military has been used as an option for a lot of black and poor people who have no other course, no other way of advancing themselves in the society. This is why the military is treated with this privilege as a privileged institution, you see? And so they weave patriotism into this. So what happens when you talk about something like black self-determination, they'll be talking about how we all Americans and we fought for this and we fought for that, and you know they joined the military. I mean, look at what just happened near Georgia. All 3 of the soldiers that were killed were black, 2 were female. From Georgia. It was in the National Guard. What the hell are they doing in the desert, in the Syrian desert?
Reserves.
Building Tower 7 or something. I mean, what is it really? Look at the face of U.S. imperialism now. It's black.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the head of the Defense Department? A big, ignorant-looking Negro. You understand? He's black. When you look at the United Nations, who's the representative to the United Nations? They're black. Who's the press secretary for for Genocide Joe. She's black. So how do we go to Africa and we talk about black liberation and Pan-Africanism in the very face of the U.S. military, the very face of imperialism is black? You see? How did they turn us against migrants? Think about it. Who in their right mind will put their baby on their back and walk 3,000 miles through jungle and fever-infested terrain to get to a place where they think they can get a better life? Who would get on a boat in Africa, you understand, and sail across the Mediterranean and threaten it and take his life into his hands to get to Europe in a better life? Why? Because the United States imperialism has destroyed the economy of their country, have destroyed their very country that they were born in, and there's no future for them there. There's nothing there for them. So your tax dollars went to pay for that, but now you're going to talk about your tax dollars ain't going to pay for migrants to get a hotel room in New York. But you ain't had no problem with your tax dollars paying for the U.S. military in Guatemala.
Right on.
But this is not an argument. This is not even put out there. Instead, you get 50 Cent. With Mayor Adams talking about, hit me up. You know? Because 50 Cent talk about, not with my tax dollars are migrants going to get a debit card to feed themselves. But 50 Cent ain't say nothing about the U.S. military that his tax dollars is going to, that destroyed these people's country. What about that? So Adams deflects, and so now 50 Cent is going after the governor. Say, well, the governor is the one that's responsible. Who the fuck is 50 Cent? A half a dollar. 50. You know, you even got your homeboy KRS stroking a piece of dog shit Adams, a cop, talking about he's the mayor of hip hop. He lost all his credits. All that whoop, 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 it's the sound of the police. That shit is, yeah? Well, that's the police that you sitting up there hugging. He trying to reinvent himself. You see? None of these Negroes are held connected. None of these arguments are articulated. 50 Cent will wind up on CNN as a businessman, being rational, talking about, well, you know, Trump might, you know, I think it was 50 that said if you want to be gangster, then Trump was a real gangster. You talk about your gangster. He ain't tell you that Trump was a broke-ass cracker that was living off his daddy's money and was a con artist. You see? So I'm saying that we allow these people to define the parameters of the issue of the debate, and we don't say nothing. We don't bum rush the show. One thing you got to say about the LGBT community back in the day, they would bum rush an anti-LGBT senator or whatever, chain themselves to the desk in their office and throw pig's blood all over the place, and they had to drag them out of there. Do we do that? Hell no. These Negroes, Hakeem Jeffries and all of them, you know, this Meeks, this knucklehead puts the bill in to force African nations to adhere to U.S. policy. And he's still walking around in the streets. Ain't nobody slashed the tires of his limousine, threw bricks at the window. Nobody. Throw a fucking brick. I mean, if somebody would have threw a brick, George Floyd would be alive now. If they would have just threw a rock at the police and ran away, that cracker would have came off in his neck.
Right.
But everybody just filmed it. Throw a brick.
Listen, I definitely appreciate what Dee's saying. Don't worry, some of y'all look like y'all gonna get indicted. It's all right. Those goddamn bricks, like the man said. They say, I remember back in the day, there's a sidetrack organized in Atlanta. Some folks would be like, did you speak to the elders? I was like, yeah, I spoke to the elders. I will make sure I speak to elders that are out of their mind, the Dhoruba, those who shot us, folks like that, you know what I mean? So definitely give it up for our brother D again. Appreciate you coming in. I want to give it up to my good comrade over there, BB Angola.
Oh, yeah.
He wrote A Silent Streets.